Hello, everyone. I am Doreen Tannenbaum, UCI's Procurement Services, Strategic Initiatives and Communications Manager, and welcome to our Department Buyer Collaboration and Strategy meeting this morning. We're providing 2 sessions per campus this week, and again, this recording along with the FAQs and all of our slides will be available on the Procurement Services website at procurement.uci.edu. We'll also be emailing everything to you as well. Maggie Bauman is now going to go over some of our features in Zoom.
Hello, please keep your audio muted during the presentation. If you have a question or comment, please share it in the chat. Using the icons in the lower left corner of the Zoom screen, you can mute or unmute your microphone, turn on and off your camera. This will start or stop your video. View the participant list. This will open a pop-out screen that includes a raise hand icon that you may use to raise your virtual hand. And from the participant list, you can change it to your screen name that is displayed. Just click on the red box that appears when you hover over your name and then select rename. The chat button will open a pop-out screen for chat, your chat panel. Please use the chat panel throughout to connect with other participants, ask questions, and share with the group when prompted. At the top right, at the top right of your Zoom screen, you will also see a choice to toggle between speaker and gallery. Gallery will show you all the participants, and speaker view will show the active speaker. At the bottom right hand is the leave meeting button should you need to leave before the end of the meeting. To enlarge this presentation, please click on the view options at the top of your Zoom window. Scroll to Zoom. From there, you can choose either fit window or other different percentage sizes. And now I would like to present our first speaker, Snehal Bhatt, UCI's Chief Procurement Officer.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join with us and get to understand and know a little bit more about what is going on in the procurement world. I can see we have 164 participants, so we have a very good attendance. We had a nice attendance on Tuesday as well, so we all thank you. That shows the interest that you have in knowing and wanting to better collaborate with the procurement services team. I hope for those who are new to UCI that you have had the opportunity to go to our procurement website, procurement.uci.edu, that Doreen's going to talk about. We released last year, and that's where we have many of the processes and policies and procedures that you will need for the understanding what you need to do for getting any purchases done at UCI. So we strongly encourage you to use that website to get answers to many of your questions. And if you don't find the answers there, please feel free to reach out to us so we can enhance our website even more. Okay. We would like to go ahead and just give you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we will do some introductions to some of the new team members that we have. Doreen will go through, as I said, who to contact for any questions. And then procurement contracts will give a very high level overview of what are the things that we need for a contract. And then Hung Pham is going to go over and talk about trademarks and promotional items. Then Patrick will go over the software procurement. We released this new training last month and the new process, but I'm sure people have questions. And we also realized that maybe we need to give a little more in-depth understanding of what you need to do after you fill out, let's say, a questionnaire, or how to go about with the procurement of any software. So Patrick will go into some details with that. Sarosh will talk about the requirements for every purchase. We are working on some toolkits that he will talk about. And then Helen will talk about purchases on federal funds. I will give a brief overview of COVID-related purchases, which I'm sure everybody is going through these days and needing them. And then we'll open up for questions and comments. As Maggie said, please make sure to put your comments in the chat, and we will do our best to get all the questions answered. And if you don't have the answers, we'll make sure to get them to you. So with that, we would like to begin our session. And I would like Doreen, actually, let me go ahead and introduce the new members. So we do have Anita Centino, who's joined us as the PAL card auditor. If you are dealing with any PAL cards, you probably have already started to meet her and know her. We have two new folks on our contracts team. We had Alex Takia, who was the interim contracts manager, who has taken a position with the medical center contracts team. So he's still within the UCI community, but with a different team. And to replace him, we have Alex Calderon. We are fortunate to have him join us. He comes from Cal State University, so very familiar with the university settings. And we are pleased to have him on board. Many of you may know Alison Dang has gone to the Office of the Research. So she's again still with UCI, but trying to expand her breadth. And so she's gone to Office of Research. And to replace her, we have Laura Moss. We are very fortunate to have her as well. She comes from Design and Construction Services. So she was with UCI and is familiar with UCI. So that's also a good thing. And then we have Joel Chico, who is our buyer, who is helping out our procurement team with many of our purchases. So with that, just so that you get to see the names and the faces, instead of doing in person, which we can't, we thought that at least you get to know who they are via Zoom. With that, I will pass it on to Doreen for her to talk about who to contact.
Thank you, Snehal. So this slide is going to go over some of our contact information. Always start with our procurement website at procurement.uci.edu. And if you have any questions, you can email us at the following. I'm going to read everything for those that are on the phone since this is more accessible. So if you have any questions for procurement or purchasing or KFS Pure App, go ahead and contact us at procurement@uci.edu. For KFS system, you can actually reach the KFS help desk at kfs@uci.edu. UCI Buy, that's our e-commerce platform. You can reach them at UCI@uci.edu. That's a mouthful. For PAL card, go ahead and reach palcard@uci.edu. For equipment and equipment management, so it's equipment-management@uci.edu. For our contracts team, it's contracts@uci.edu. And for trademarks and licensing, you can reach trademarks@uci.edu. Again, all of this information is on our procurement services website, and all these slides will be emailed to you by next week. And with that, I'll turn it over to our new contracts manager, Andrew Calderon.
Thank you, Doreen, and good morning, everyone. As Snehal had mentioned, yes, I'm the newly hired contracts manager. I did have 6 years with Cal State Long Beach, so I understand what a lot of the needs of higher ed as they compared to industry, but I look forward to working with each of you and trying to work through the different needs and issues that you have arising related to contracts. If you can go ahead and switch to the next slide. One of the topics I wanted to discuss with you today is something that you can help you to work more efficiently and make sure that your contracts are what they need you to say in terms of holding the vendor or the supplier to the requirements that you're expecting. One of the more common questions we get either to the contracts folder or just directly to us as a team is somebody sending us a vendor's contract and asking, hey, can we sign this or can we use this? Or can you review this for us and tell us what it means? Or can you draw us up a contract? And the answer to that question is, well, it depends. And in order to be able to assist you, we have to know the details of what you're doing and what your needs are. In general, contract terms mean one thing, but depending on the scenario and depending on what you're doing, a contract term that may be fine in one setting might actually be ill-advised or a bad idea in another setting. And so as far as coming to your procurement and purchase contracts, we need to get the details from you in terms of what you're doing. And the best way to do that is through the requisition that you'll complete rather than just sending us the vendor's paper. For one thing, at UC, we're expected to use the standard UC templates that are provided that might include the UC terms and conditions, but other documents like data security terms as well. But another thing is that, again, in reviewing the vendor's paper or reviewing anything we're doing, we need to know how you're going to use the goods or services that you're buying. It's helpful, especially too, if you can, to fill in the requisition as completely as possible. See attached might be okay if the attached thing that you've included with your requisition includes all the details that you need. A lot of times though, it's helpful to have the details written out in your own words so that you can help explain if it's a piece of equipment or if it's a service. We may not be the subject matter experts on what that thing does or how you use a particular service. So your educating us is extremely helpful so that we can make sure that the details are recorded correctly on the contract. The higher the spend and the more complex of the activity, the more detail that we really need. Things like a good description of the services to be performed. We need to know how the prices or the fees are determined, whether it's an hourly rate, whether it's a flat rate based on a particular phase or a key deliverable. We need to know when payment is due. We just generally discourage deposits, but they can be arranged in certain circumstances. But we really want to make sure that the supplier or the contractor is providing what they need before we make payment. If there's any completion dates or milestones in order to determine that the supplier or contractor is making progress, we want to be able to note those things as well. You know, we don't want to necessarily be paying for things when we can't clearly identify that the supplier has completed the necessary tasks. Another key element is whether the work will be completed on or off of UCI's campus, not just because we need to look at proper insurance coverages, but there's other factors such as fair work and fair wage that are implicated when a vendor comes on campus to do the work. Coming on campus also raises the risk level because again, we're involving now UCI property and direct interaction with UCI personnel. There's also some things that are happening too that we need to get information out to the vendors if they're coming on campus during this time period where the campus has certain COVID requirements that they need to comply with. Such as wearing a mask, wearing gloves, and interacting with other people as well. So do, again, work with us in terms of providing the details that we need in order to help coordinate your contract quickly and efficiently. We will reach out to you as needed, but if you can get as much information to us up front, that will help us move things along quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. With our next step, I will be holding a poll question for all of you. And our first poll question is going to be, for recurring payment purchase orders, how many days does a PO stay open after its scheduled end date? And just so you know, your answers are all anonymous. So if you're not sure, don't feel judged. Oh, wow, they're just rolling in. This is wonderful. Let's give it another 10 seconds. All right, let's share the results.
Okay, you want me to take it from here, Maggie? So as you can tell, this is something that many people may not be aware of, and it's important that people know what these days are. Essentially, because if you have a recurring purchase order where you have a start date and an end date, so typically when we have a recurring purchase order, we have a contract that's in place that would have a start date and an end date. In the past, people have had the tendency of putting additional days to the end date so that they have some buffer in order for the suppliers to actually invoice us and for us to make the payment. So the correct answer to this question, as it stands right now in KFS, KFS is programmed right now to keep a recurring purchase order open for up to 45 days from the time the end date has been mentioned in KFS. So if you have a PO that was a recurring PO with an end date and the supplier did not invoice you for 45 days, or you did not finish making the payments to the supplier within that time period, the PO will close. And the reason why we brought this up as a poll question is because we have a lot of instances when people ask us to come back, say, can you please open this PO? We still have outstanding invoices. We haven't paid them yet, and we need to still make the payment. So instead of doing that, what we are trying to do is educate people to understand that they know what is the current process. If you actually think that we need to increase the number of days that the PO should remain open so that we can actually ensure that the supplier can invoice us and we can process the payment, we are asking the folks to give us your inputs to let us know whether you would like to leave it at 45 days, increase it to 60 days, or maybe even raise it to 90 days. Now there are pros and cons to that, but you don't have to give the answer right now. If you have the answer and want to provide your response, please go ahead and put the answer in the chat. But if you want to go back and take some time to think about it and then let us know, please feel free to go back and give us a response. We'll be sending a questionnaire for your surveys, or rather a survey for your responses. And that's where Maggie will be asking you this question, and you can provide us your response to that survey to let us know what is your preference, so we can listen to our customers and then make the decision on what we want to set those days to be, okay? Please be mindful of this. Many people may not even know about this, but this is something that we want to encourage people to actually put the start and end date of the PO to match with the contract start and end date, because many times we are asked to run some reports by the auditors or other folks at UCOP as to what kind of contracts are still active and open. And if we don't have the same dates in the PO as we have in the contract, we run into the issue of not being accurate, or having to go to every PO, open up every contract and find out what actually the start and end date of the contract is. So if we try to keep this all in the system, it's very easy for us to run some reports and get the answers much faster and quicker. So that's one of the reasons why we would like to, going forward, match the start and end date of a recurring PO or a contract to what is actually in the contract. Hope this is helpful and beneficial for you all to gain better understanding. So we're going to go to the next section where Hung Pham is going to talk about trademarks and promotional items.
Good morning, everybody. Does everybody see my screen? Did I share the right screen, or is it my DoorDash?
You're
okay.
Good, Hung.
Okay, here we go. My name's Hung Pham. I'm the trademark director here at the campus, and I know that I've worked with a number of you on this. I can see May, I see Lindy. So hi to you guys, and thanks for coming. Today, I'm just gonna talk about something that many of you are already probably aware of and have done already, which is ordering branded merchandise for your departments. And it's a pretty simple process, but I'm able to put about 50 slides, so let's get to it. The first slide is, I'm just going to tell you how this is going to go. First, we're just going to do a quick introduction to what trademarks is, because often people get mixed up between trademarks and copyrights and things like that. I'm not going to get too far into it, but next thing we're going to talk about is our licensing program and why we have it and how it works, and that how it fits into the campus. And then finally, we'll end up with something useful, which is basically tips on how to go about buying your branded merchandise. So first off, usually during a live event, I'll probably call out somebody, but does anybody know what a trademark is? Being that everybody's muted, I'll give you the answer. It's any word, symbol, design, logo, or slogan that identifies and distinguishes one product from or service from another. So basically, it's a way to identify the source of a thing or a service. So let me give you some examples. And they're going to be easy, because that's the whole point of a trademark, right? You want to make it easy for people to know where that thing or service came from. So here's the first one. I bet all of you can figure out that this is from Kentucky Fried Chicken, or KFC. Here This is a very good trademark because if you look at the picture of Colonel Sanders, that'll instantly tell you that it's KFC probably. But also the slogan is very catchy. I think a lot of you probably already know that their slogan is "It's finger licking good," and you probably can even say it along with what the commercial says. But what I'll leave you with is on this one is something very interesting. Due to COVID, I don't know if all of you know, they've had to take out the finger licking good. I mean, the finger licking part, and now it's just good. So you might be able to use this in Jeopardy sometime in the future. So right off the bat, I've already given you something of value. And here's the next example. Can anybody spot whose trademark this is? I know many of you are thinking, God, that's easy, Hung. It says Puma right there. Yeah, I know. But if you take a closer look, can you spot another trademark here? I'm sure many of you can. It's basically In-N-Out's trademarks right there on the shoelaces. Now, this one's pretty interesting and a really good example of how powerful trademarks are, because In-N-Out basically is a burger chain, as we all know. But yet, even though you see the symbols there on a shoe, you can recognize instantly that it belongs to In-N-Out, even though the shoe is unrelated to their main product. Unfortunately, though, there was a cease and desist, and Puma no longer sells these shoes. Trust me, I tried. So, like In-N-Out and like Kentucky Fried Chicken, the campus also has very recognizable trademarks that we've registered and are federally protected. As you can see on the tower right here, the BC Anteater is one of our most prominent trademarks, as well as the Stack logo, which is an athletics only trademark, and of course our seal. And some of you might be surprised to know, ZOT is also registered and protected. I say surprised because a lot of the students don't think it's protected, and they use it all over the place for all sorts of things that unfortunately I have to try to take down. And a common question I have about our trademarks is, well, you know, Hung, I've seen it in that font as well as that font. So I know it's protected if it's in that font, but what if I decide to do this or this? Is it still protected? The short answer is it's still protected. It doesn't have to look in the official form or the official font type for it to be protected by federal trademark law. Now, here at the campus, we have a licensing program which I manage. And basically what the program does is we grant permission to use our trademarks on items by issuing a license to vendors. And those vendors use that license to put our marks on items like hats, shirts, pennants, plush toys right there, and all sorts of good stuff. In addition to retail items, licensees also will help departments get staff shirts, as well as giveaways like this coffee mug, which I'm still trying to get from dining. Lynn, if you're here, you know how to reach me. And why do we have a licensing program? Well, the licensing program's main purpose, aside from making sure that you're able to get your branded items, is to ensure that those items are produced in a socially responsible way. And our social responsibility policy is embodied in the UC Code of Conduct. In that Code of Conduct, basically what it does is it prohibits the use of forced slave or child labor in any part of the manufacture of the merchandise. Requires transparency throughout the supply chain of merchandise bearing university marks. So basically what does that mean? We want to know where the stuff comes from and who's been making it. And I know it's a little odd to think about in this day and age of slave labor or forced labor or concentration camps. But as the next couple of slides will tell you, it's a very real thing. But first, to explain what is a licensee is basically a company that specializes in making these items that have our marks or other people's marks. It's not just UCI that has licensees, of course, but the NFL, Major League Baseball, all those companies that make those items that you wear with the logo are likely licensees of those trademark owners. And for UCI licensees, they're contractually obligated to comply with our code of conduct, as I mentioned. And one of the key things to take away from this slide is that not all onboarded vendors on KFS are licensees. We only have a very small subset of licensees, and we have a much larger list of approved vendors. So just remember that. Make sure that whoever you're getting to make the items with the university marks are indeed licensees, and I'll tell you later on how to make sure where you get the list of licensees. Now, let's get back to social responsibility. You asked me, well, concentration camps, slave labor, where's that? Well, recently in the New York Times and in many other news outlets, they've detailed the manufacturing process in China, where they've used a Muslim minority called the Uyghurs, into forcing them to make items for many companies like Nike, Volkswagen, and that's a major concern for the university, of course. One of the most recent problems is that China has been using Uyghur labor to produce face masks. In this pandemic, the item that is most purchased recently have been face coverings. And so I've spent a lot of time recently making sure that the only companies that are able to make branded face masks for the campus have been vetted, and they have to produce a list of manufacturing companies that they use to get those face masks. And at this time, there are 4 internal licensees that can provide branded face masks to the university, and they're ID.me, Manhattan Stitching, 4imprint, and Guerrilla Marketing. And as part of my job at the trademark office, I help departments as well as the licensees to make sure that the brand is on point with the brand guidelines from strategic communications. And of course, I call Stratcom often to make sure that my interpretation of some of these are just some of the rules, that I interpret it properly, so that everybody can get items, cool items like this beach pail, and a properly licensed face mask. So finally, the whole point of this is to come down to here to give you a simple 3 steps of how to get properly licensed items. The first step, and really the most important step, is select an authorized licensee. You can get a licensee list at our website, trademarks.uci.edu. There's a link there that lists, gives you 2 lists. One is the complete list, and the second one is a local licensee list. I suggest starting with the local licensee list, because those folks are around here. Perhaps they can bring samples to you in case you wanted to see what the items look like before you order, and they can provide a little bit better personal service. But if they don't have the items that you want, you can also go to the full list. We have quite a few, and you can always ask me to help and point you in certain directions for certain items if you need that kind of help. And then the licensee will help you create your artwork unless you already have your artwork, but the licensee can also digitize it and do the layout for you. And then the last step is that the licensee takes care of the trademark approval request, which is basically they send it to me for a formal approval. And I do that through a portal so that it's all nice and legal, and they can produce the items without getting a cease and desist from the university. And again, I'm happy to help at any stage in the process. My emails are down there. I answer to either one of those emails. And I also, my phone number is right there, 824-8964. It comes straight to my cell phone, which kind of works these days. But if we ever get back to normal, I'm also located in the university tower. By that time, they might have kicked me out of there, but hopefully I'll still be there. And that's it.
Thank you, Hung. So we are going to go to our next poll question, and Maggie's going to pop that up for us. And our first question is, do you know your department's unit procurement point of contact? And it's a yes, no. And have you seen the new software procurement questionnaire? So we'll give you guys a few seconds to go ahead and answer for us. A few more seconds. We've got those numbers are rolling in right now. Okay, thank you. So here are the results. So a majority of you, about 66%, do know who your unit procurement point of contact is. That's great. If you don't, we are definitely here to help you find that person. And 57%, or sorry, 43% of you said yes, you've seen the new software procurement questionnaire, and 57 have said no. So that is actually listed on our software procurement page. And Snehal will go over a few other details for us right now.
Yes, and not everybody obviously has probably needed to buy a software in the last couple of months. Actually, the questionnaire has been there in place for quite some time, but not everybody probably buys software. So you may not have actually seen the form, which is okay. But if the idea behind, again, the polls is to try to educate you while also interactively getting you to get engaged in the whole process, and for us to get a gauge for what are the areas where we need to still continue to focus on and educate and train our folks on campus. So if you have not seen the procurement questionnaire for software, and if you ever need to buy any software, including any of the items that may be readily available, please make sure to fill out the procurement questionnaire, because that's what's going to be important for you to be able to determine whether a data security review is going to be needed or not. And Patrick's going to go into a lot more details about that in the next few minutes. But please get to know your procurement point of contact, who would be your departmental buyer or somebody who helps you with your purchase within your department. That's who the procurement point of contact should be. And they need to also be familiar with what needs to be done for a new software procurement purchase. But I will let Patrick go through the details.
All right. Thank you, Snehal. My name is Patrick Coe. I'm the Senior Buyer of Procurement Services, and I handle primarily the IT commodities, including software, hardware, and also anything AV related. So some of you in the chat I've recognized, but for those of you who haven't met me, now you know who to reach. Today, I'm going to be spending some time highlighting the role of the Unit Procurement Point of Contact, or UPPOC for short. I'll be using this acronym in my presentation because the other one is quite a tongue twister. So some of you may remember seeing this slide from last month's software training. There are definitely some new roles and acronyms that you may or may not be familiar with. While I won't be covering these other roles today, you can always locate the new roles and responsibilities on our procurement website under the procurement tab, buying goods, and selecting the software icon. For most of you here today, you typically are the UPPOC or work very closely with this person. A frequent question that I've been getting lately is there a list for the UPPOCs for your unit? And the answer to that is no, but it is typically the person in your department who interacts with the suppliers, central procurement, contracts, and the OIT department. If you have any of these interactions, the odds are you probably are the UPPOC. Another question that came up in our prior meeting on Tuesday was, can there be multiple UPPOCs in your unit? And the answer is yes, depending on how your unit is structured. Some of you have a dedicated procurement staff, while others may perform this role as only part of their job. Next slide, Maggie. Next, we will be going over the new software procurement questionnaire, which some of you may be seeing for the first time. Before filling out this form, we recommend that you first try to identify, are there any existing UCOP system-wide agreements or any local UCI master agreements that are out there? Typically, these are the easiest agreements to piggyback off of. Locating agreements that may have been signed by other departments may be useful, but in many cases, the term dates, use case, particular software, or even the statement of work may not be the same. So these would need to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. You can locate these existing agreements either by searching the current list of contracted suppliers on our procurement website, by searching previous orders within KFS, or by accessing the inventory report of existing agreements, which will be a more comprehensive list. And we hope to have this available to the campus towards the end of the year. Please note that if your department has an existing multi-year agreement with a supplier, the questionnaire is not needed. In fact, we also encourage people to utilize the same purchase orders for the multiple years. The PO can be amended on separate line items to reflect those additional years. This hopefully will save users time from having to copy over any backup documentations from the previous orders into the new orders. Now onto the questionnaire. Sorry, Meg, if you can go back, please. This new questionnaire was designed to provide us with additional information as to what's being purchased, what the software does, what type of data is being shared or stored, whether or not the supplier has access to our network or data, and the list goes on. All of these questions are really designed to help us assess the risk involved with the purchase. In addition, it helps us to determine who else needs to review the software and whether or not an agreement is ultimately needed. In the past, we've received numerous requisitions or requests for software with no to very little information provided. In some cases, all that's attached to the requisition is just a quote. Instead of the back and forth conversations with procurement trying to determine what is being requested and what the use case is, the software procurement questionnaire provides that information. Not only does this form help us out, but it also helps the UPPOCs because in many cases, we understand that the UPPOC is not the technical expert in the department, and they're merely passing along the same information that the end users are providing them. What I will say is, it is a responsibility of the end user to fill out this form. But it's also the responsibility of the UPPOC to make sure it's filled out completely and accurately. Excuse me. If filled out incorrectly, it could be routed through the wrong workflow and cause further delays. So, as a UPPOC, if you're having difficulties filling out this form, we encourage you to reach out to your unit information security lead to assist in making sure that this form is filled out correctly. If you don't know who your unit information security lead is, that can be located on the OIT security website, and there should be 2 assigned per unit. In addition, I know some of you have reached out to your unit information security leads, and they've been pushing back and may or may not necessarily know what their role is in this process. So they have been or will be trained by Central OIT to help you in this process. So many of you may not have too many issues filling out this form, but the most common question I've been receiving since the last presentation is, now that the questionnaire is filled out, what next? What do I do with it? While we've been updating this form, and we'll be providing better written instructions, here's the general rule of thumb for determining what to do next. I'll cover 2 scenarios first. The software is installed locally or hosted locally, and the supplier does not have access to the UC network or our data. The other scenario being the software is installed in the cloud or both locally and in the cloud, and all the security questions are marked no. In these 2 situations, a security review is not needed. However, If P3 or P4 data is stored locally in the first scenario, we do recommend that you contact OIT to have a discussion and a possible review. Whether or not a security review is needed, an accessibility review may still be needed. However, you will need to answer the 3 accessibility questions on this form for guidance, and it's, for the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. However, if a security and accessibility review is not needed, Maggie, next slide, please. Then please proceed with the purchase by submitting a requisition in KFS, and be sure to attach number 1, the completed software procurement questionnaire. This will be required on all software purchases moving forward. And second, any backup documentation or any supplier agreements or paperwork. And please keep in mind that any third-party forms that require signatures must be reviewed and signed by the procurement services team. If any department signatures will be needed, our team will be sure to route that through DocuSign. Next slide, please. If a security review is needed, please route to your unit information security lead for review if P1, P2 data has been identified on the questionnaire. For P3 or P4 data, if the software is installed in the cloud or both locally and in the cloud, and any of the security questions are marked yes or unsure, this will need to be routed to OIT for security review via the emails on the screen. If the PHI box is marked yes, this will need to be routed to the UCI Health IT team for review. Their email is on the screen as well. Next slide, please. So before engaging OIT and the procurement team in this process, the UPPOC needs to obtain the following from the supplier to assist OIT in their security review. And this includes, number 1, the supplier security plan or policy. If you're dealing with a small business, typically the odds are they will not have one. However, one can be created by them by following the sample list of requirements found on Article 4 of Appendix Data Security. And number 2, a third-party SOC 2 Type 2 report, which is a third-party audit of the supplier security plan and infrastructure. Number 3, a HECFET report, which we more commonly see now. It's another long security questionnaire that the supplier fills out, and it's become somewhat of an industry standard. And number 4 is the vendor application security risk form. And this form in particular is only needed when HIPAA data has been identified. This form has not been made available yet, but this will be on our website shortly. In addition to requesting these documents, we asked you to forward our UC contract templates for the supplier to review. In many cases, especially when you're dealing with software, a lot of these suppliers may have their own agreements that they want to push us to sign, but our first directive is to use our own UC template as the primary agreement. This consists of the UC purchasing agreement and attachment A, which needs to be completed by the department, the use, or at least drafted, the UC terms and conditions, Appendix DS, and Appendix GDPR or BAA if applicable. Before sending the Appendix DS to the supplier for review, the UPPOC needs to first fill out Exhibit 1. Based on the protection levels identified in Exhibit 1 of DS, it will spell out what insurance coverages are required by the supplier under the UC terms and conditions. If the UPPOC has any difficulty filling this out, just like the software procurement questionnaire, we ask that you please contact your unit information security lead to assist with filling this out. Next slide, please. So, now that you've received the security documents and edits to the UC agreement back from the supplier, now what would be the next step? And we've identified 3 here. The first being that you'll need to route the security documents and Appendix DS, if there are any edits to it, to OIT's email address for review. This will then generate a ticket and service now and be assigned to someone for review. If there is HIPAA involved, you'll need to route this to the UCI Health IT email address mentioned earlier, not main campus IT. And be sure to also include a copy of the vendor application security risk form. In that form, I believe it's there are sections highlighted in green and sections highlighted in orange. One needs to be filled out by the department and the other filled out by the supplier. Number two, we ask that you create a requisition in KFS. This will get you in line in our procurement contracts review workflow. We've had people sending us rush requests in the past and trying to bypass the existing queue of contracts that we already have in our queue to be reviewed. So please be sure to create a requisition. We've also implemented a new commodity code for software or services that have a cloud component to it. And many of you have not seen this because if you do a search for software for commodity, this code does not pop up. But please keep in mind, you'll want to use 81162000, or you could do a search in KFS for the word cloud. Number three, we ask that you route the edits and the red lines to the UC agreement from the supplier to our contracts email address. This will then be assigned to one of our contracts analysts for review. The rest of the steps in the software procurement process can be located on our website and also on the presentation from last month, which I believe is recorded. Next slide. I've covered this particular slide in our previous presentation, but I wanted to re-highlight some important takeaways. Number one, if you are on this call the end user or requester, we ask that you submit your request as early as possible. In many cases, by the time we receive these, they're usually after the fact, or they're needed within a week. Given the lead time, and for contract reviews, you'll want to give us adequate time for review. This is especially true during our fiscal year end. Number two, we ask that you consult with your UPPOC first. Be sure to always provide them a copy of the completed software procurement questionnaire. The odds are, as I mentioned before, they're not going to know all the information needed for us to process your request. And lastly, we ask that you never sign any supplier agreements, terms and conditions, or any order forms on behalf of the university. These will need to be routed to procurement for review and signatures. We have encountered some issues with certain departments that have had issues or difficulties canceling their software subscriptions because they sign agreements that may have had an auto renew clause, or you required a 90 days notice of cancellation. If you are the UPPOC, we ask that you check for existing UC system-wide agreements or local master agreements that you might be able to utilize. Please also be sure you are in compliance with BUS 43 and California Public Contract Code. Secondly, we ask that you verify that the software procurement questionnaire is filled out accurately and completely. While it may seem like the UPPOC has a heavy responsibility, we really want to encourage you to reach out to your unit information security lead for assistance in filling out these forms. And third, we ask that you please allow sufficient time for us to review. As some of you can attest to, the majority of time spent in the software review process has typically been us waiting for the supplier to give us all the documentation and the edits to our agreements that we need. So please be sure to plan accordingly, especially during fiscal year end. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And with that, we're moving on to our next poll question. So let me launch it here for you. First question is, are you familiar with the source selection and price reasonableness, the SSPR form? Next question, when does a purchase require completion of an SSPR form? And this one is multiple choice, and your options are for all federally funded purchases greater than $10,000, or for all federally funded purchases greater than $100,000, for when the project is not competitively bid and is not a contracted supplier, all of the above, or none of the above. And then if you scroll down, you'll see that the third question is, would you like a training session on how to fill out the SSPR form properly? We are rolling in at 42% of the vote. I'll give it another moment. Okay, I'm going to end the polling now. And we had 115 people voted. So I will share the results. 51% of you are not familiar with the SSPR form, which is okay, because you are going to be. Question number 2 is, when does a purchase require completion of the SSPR form? And it's a multiple choice, and the correct answer is all of the above. And so if you didn't know that before, now you do. And finally, thank you for letting us know. If you would need a training session, we will make sure that comes along soon. Now, our next presenter is Sarosh Sigamporia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarosh Sigamporia. I'm the Sourcing and Procurement Manager. Thank you, Maggie. My presentation will include some key basic requisition requirements, and mostly I'll be just talking on having proper documentation so our buyers can process the requisition quickly and efficiently. So we have identified some key common concerns across some requisitions, which we spend a lot of time on. We'll be working on a department's buyer checklist soon for your guidance. In the meantime, please keep these few points in mind below. On my slide, I have put covering pretty much of the real estate of the slide, but we put this requisition screenshot on it, which shows explanation. So if you fill this explanation box with information, that would be very helpful to all our buyers. That reduces a lot of back and forth, and the buyers will know exactly what to do and what it is pertaining to. If it's a recurring purchase order for services, please reference the PO number from the previous year. So again, on this part, we don't have to do research and go back and kind of find out. This will again help the buyer to process the requisition quickly and on time. Also, please attach any invoice if it's after the fact PO. So we will know that it's already after the fact and the invoice isn't there. Also, please include all supporting documents, example codes, associated agreement, statement of work. That all will be very helpful too. Again, we cannot process a PO if any of the documents are missing, even if it's a rush or request for approvals. As Nihal had mentioned before, compliance is a crucial role we play. So whether it's important or it has to be processed, we always need documentation and necessary guidelines in order to process the PO. The next important point is the SSPR form, which we go back and forth a lot too. I would like to touch some points on that too. Please make sure all the applicable sections in the SSPR form are filled correctly. From the poll, we did see that some of you don't know what it is and probably need some more guidance on it. We will try and put some training documents together or even a training session so you guys know how to fill it, and it's, again, efficient on our part, so we don't go back and forth between the requisition. The other point I would like to touch upon is the software purchases if it involves HIPAA data. If it involves the HIPAA data, the medical IT security team will need to perform security risk review. So please plan ahead for those kind of requests, because those we, again, get really trapped. Those are highly sensitive data, and sometimes, again, we need it in a few days, and it's almost not in our control. It has to go to medical center. So please plan ahead for these kind of requests, as the lead time can be really long due to the nature of detailed reviews for that agreement. That's all I have. And again, we are working on a department's checklist too. So hopefully that will give some more guidelines on certain requirements and compliance for requisitions. Thank you. The next slide is for UCI buy updates, which we just wanted to kind of show everybody that these are the few catalogs which are going to be releasing. Again, we highly encourage everybody to use UCI buy, as it's very efficient. It creates you know, a lot of touch points which we don't have to do, and it's much faster processing. Approvals are much quicker on that too. In progress, we have Waxy Punchout, which is replacing a hosted Punchout. So the Waxy Punchout we'll have more details, more commodities. It will look prettier too. The search results will be better on it also. We have 10-gram steel case Punchout coming too, which I know a lot of people are excited about. In the pipeline, we have Thomas Scientific, Office Depot Workspace, and Home Depot Pro. Those are all Punchouts we have done. Again, we like Punchouts because they're easy to search and they look good, and they're directly connected to the website too. Those are more, the Office Depot and Home Depot Pro are designed more for facilities, but it has a lot of commodities in there. It also has a lot of janitorial commodities and janitorial products in there for those two. Barbara has also created a new landing page for better search results, which we've heard a lot of positive feedback on. And below is our contact for UCI buy at edu. And Barbara is also on the line, if she can just say hello to everybody, so you guys know who our UCI buy person is.
Hello.
Barbara, can you say hello? Yeah, good.
Hi.
Great. Okay, so Barbara is in charge of all the UCI buy, and if you have any questions, concerns, she'll be really happy to walk you through the process. If somebody is new to the organization and is kind of lost what it is, she can walk you through the entire process. That's all I have. Thank you.
And thank you, Sarosh. And with that, and Barbara. And with that, we'll be moving on to our next poll question. This one is actually a true or false. So get ready. Let's get this up here for you. If a purchase order amendment, POA, results in the PO exceeding $100,000, quotes do not need to be obtained to satisfy price reasonableness. Is that true or false?
Oh, people do know this question. It's very
I
good to
know.
know.
I was hoping my past teacher experience in writing quizzes and such would help me in this one, in tricking people, but
Yeah, it's like the answer is obvious.
Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and end the polling, and I will share the results. 93% of those polled said false.
Yep, poll the audience worked.
Yeah, it's great to know that that many people are aware of what the fact is in this matter.
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the next section with Helen Chang. She'll be talking about purchases on federal funds.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. So I will mention about what's the federal funds by using federal funds requirements. So the university here, UCI, we implement that since July of 2018. The uniform guidance is the federal regulations published by White House Office of the Management and Budget, and set all the regulations to guide universities and the nonprofit organizations how we manage the federal awards or cooperative agreements. And so one of the regulations is called procurement standards. So the procurement standards, the most changes is that small purchase federal fund, the price range is greater than 10,000 and under 100K. And another category of the purchase is called competitive bid, which is greater than 100K and then has all the different requirements. And university, we post it's called SSPR form, source, selection, and price reasonableness form. So price reasonableness is the key factor that we can, purchase the item from a certain vendor. I want to mention a few areas that people often to make a mistake. So for the price reasonableness, if it's not source justification, then you need to attach at least 3 quotes, 3 informal quotes. So the quotes from the website, from the flyer, or from the vendor's quote that all satisfy as informal quotes. And next one will be done if you select, or maybe the requester rather, the PI select the source justification, then one of the area they often select by mistake is award agency approval. That approval is meant to the requester not to compete, competitive price for the item that you want to purchase. It's not approval budget item on your budget proposal. So that area. And then finally, the form needs to be signed and dated as well. Okay, and so that's part of the procurement standards. I want to briefly mention about the regulations also have it's called property standards. That's why university here, we have to inventory once in 2 years, All right, next slide, please. Okay, federal fund checklist. Federal fund checklist is the area that's upcoming. We're going to be training departmental contract managers. One of the important area is that we need the department to, before you initiate the KFS requisition, make sure you do the, it's called department verification at the SAMS.gov website. So make sure this vendor doesn't have a status called no exclusion, meaning they don't have a restriction to do the business with federal. So that's what will be upcoming in the training. And perhaps we will also train you the SSPR form, since 51% of the audience here requesting us to train you. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. And next, we've got another poll question. Poll question number 5. Another true or false. Oh, I didn't bring up my dashboard here. Let's get this here. True or false? A supplier can be used for any purchase if the supplier is onboarded in KFS and has an active status. They are rolling in. Let's see here. 50% of the vote. You're welcome to just guess if you don't know. Another 5 more seconds. Okay, let's share the results. 60% said false, 40% said true. Snehal, I believe you wanted to speak to this.
Well, I guess, as you can tell, not everybody is aware of this situation where people think that just because a supplier is in KFS and has a vendor number and is in active status, we can go ahead and use them whenever we please. But as 60% of the pollsters said, that is not true. And that is the correct answer. Just because a supplier was onboarded for maybe one purchase or one particular instance does not mean that they can be then used for anything that you want to buy from that supplier. So please be mindful of that. We have run into the situations where people say, but that supplier is already in KFS. Yes, but they could have been onboarded for a very particular reason for one particular purchase, and does not mean that they can be used for any purchases that you want. So anytime you want to use a supplier for a particular reason, of course, they need to be onboarded in KFS, but you have to still be mindful that are they actually approved to purchase what you are looking to purchase at that instant. If you were the one who had used them in the past for the same reasons that you want to use them again, probably you can go ahead and use them. But don't make that assumption that just because they're in KFS, that they can be utilized for any purchase that you may want to get.
Thanks, Snehal. This is Hung again. I just wanted to make sure to follow up on that. It's especially true in the instance of licensed products. So as I mentioned real quickly during my presentation, if you're getting a licensed or branded item, please make sure that it's from a licensee and not just because they are in the KFS system.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hung. All right. Coming to COVID-19 related purchases. I'm sure a lot of people probably have questions on this, and we won't be able to go into too much detail because we probably will then run out of time. I want to make sure that we answer a lot of questions that people have posted and leave it open for Q&A. But I wanted to make sure that people at least are aware of what to do if they need some of these items that have been agreed to be provided by Central Campus. So the items that the campus has agreed to provide to everybody are face coverings. So every employee, essential employee or employee that would be coming to campus for even for a short period of time can actually get 3 washable or reusable face coverings. And we have procured plenty of stock for that to be able to provide those for all the faculty, staff, and students. So if anybody is looking for face coverings, they can go to the EHS website or send email to safety@uci.edu to arrange for your pickup of face coverings. Obviously, you want to try to do that for your department rather than just do it individually, but that's an option you have. The other products that the campus has agreed to provide to the campus centrally are some cleaning supplies. So we have disinfectant sprays, and along with that, we provide paper towels and gloves, disposable gloves for people to wear when they're using the disinfectant spray to clean up some of their their areas that are, their private personal areas, to clean the surfaces on a frequent basis, and are also providing sanitizers. So we have also procured plenty of sanitizer bottles. We in fact received a pretty large substantial supply of sanitizer bottles from Cal OES. So California State actually has been generous enough to provide us with those products that you can actually utilize or procure or get from facilities management. Those are being distributed by facilities management. And currently they are being distributed through the building facilities managers. So for those units that have building facilities managers, you should be coordinating with them to get your needed supplies. For those who don't have that, you can actually go to the website that is available. There's a link that is available on facilities management website, uci.edu/coronavirus / some numbers and cleaning supplies.php. And then there is a form, there is a link to a form that you need to fill out to let them know how many people you need the supplies for and the kind of products that you are looking for. And facilities management will make arrangements for you to have those products. We also are providing the plexiglass barriers. Primarily right now, they are allocated for customer-facing counters. So if you have counters in your offices that are customer facing, you can actually request plexiglass barriers by going to the EH&S website. It says returning to site supplies needed. But before you do that, EH&S also asks that you get a site evaluation performed by them just to make sure that they can help you make, get the right product for your office space. So those are the three areas where the campus is providing supplies to everybody on campus. Also wanted to let everybody know that we have ordered quite a few sanitizer dispensers that are going to be installed in the various buildings and also in housing for the faculty, staff, and students, and have also ordered a lot of freestanding stands for the housing units where there will be sanitizer dispensers made available for people to sanitize their hands. One other thing that keeps coming up, and I want to kind of briefly mention, is the fact that a lot of people are asking for what about products we want to buy for home office use. So there is a memo that has come from UCOP that actually is going to be distributed with more clarification by our CFO and Vice Chancellor Ron Cortez's office. He's going to be putting out a memo, which is pretty much ready to be distributed. That's going to go out, giving people more instructions on what electronic equipment can be purchased for tackling this pandemic and for instructions and things of that nature. In a sense, anything that can be brought back to the campus when the normal operations begin will be allowed with the approval from the appropriate departmental chairs or supervisors or the department heads. So that's what you need to do, is make sure that you get the approvals, and then you of course have to fill out the equipment leaving campus form so that we can keep track of what items have been purchased that are being used at the home offices that needs to be brought back to the campus. If you can actually take your equipment that is in the office to use at home, you can also do that. Make sure obviously you follow all the protocols for safety and making sure that you wear face masks and face coverings and have the physical distancing orders in place. But you can pick those equipment, make sure again to fill out the equipment leaving campus form that is also available on our procurement website that you can go and access. It's under equipment management. There is a form that's been developed that's actually a DocuSign routed form. So it's all online and you don't need to do any paperwork or any printing or signing. It's all electronic. So those are the options. When it comes to furniture, UCOP still has not given any directive on allowing employees to buy furniture for home office use. There's a committee that actually is being formed that is evaluating those different situations, especially for ergonomic needs. We are working with some suppliers to identify how we can have some furniture available. We have identified some products that people can use for home office. But like I said, a committee is formed to actually provide guidance and direction to the campus as a whole as to whether it's an allowable purchase or not. As I said, as it stands right now, UCOP's direction is that furniture purchases are not reimbursable, or that's not something that they have approved for purchase and kept at home. So that's still being evaluated. And once we have a firm decision from the senior management on which direction we need to go, we will be sure to let everybody know what the final outcome is. Because I know a lot of people have a lot of questions on that particular purchase.
Snehal, it's Lori. Can I?
Hi, Lori.
Hi. Thank you. I just want to add, I saw a few comments. This memo that's going out really is solely to kind of re-announce, if you will, the UCOP policy that came out at the end of June. So we've already been following those guidelines, and it relates to not only what you just discussed from the equipment standpoint, but also meals, you know, what's considered a business meal in a remote working environment. But like you said, Snehal said, we're going to have this committee to address some of these other areas, especially as there may be more hybrid situations in the future, you know, with people working remotely on a more permanent basis. And so we're seeking out guidance from a system-wide basis. So we need a little more time and didn't want to conflate the two, you know, the UCOP policy with things that we're trying to figure out here at UCI.
Yep, agreed. Jenny, to answer your question on the memo, the funding requests needs to go to the budget office for items that are required by the departments, and they need to get central funding for these purchases. If you're going to be buying it from your own funding from the department and getting reimbursed, then you can submit the request for reimbursement to the budget office for those purchases. And we'll go through all the questions that people have asked and try to answer those. Thank you, Laurie. Appreciate your additional inputs.
Thank you both. So we had some submitted questions that we received earlier. And our first question is, how often do procurement policies change? And the answer is when there are new mandates or guidelines introduced by federal or state government, or new policy is introduced by UC Office of the President. And we have a couple of policies listed there, BFB-BUS 43 and UCI Purchasing Procedures 707-10. The next question was, my department needs to mail purchases to students. Should the purchases be made on the PAL card or the corporate travel card? So the answer is, if the purchases are gifts, they should use the corporate travel card. If they are program supplies, please use the PAL card. And we have the procurement.uci.edu/PAL card and accounting.uci.edu/travel/before/travel-card. Wow, that's a long one. Okay. We're gonna go over some of the questions that we received in the chat. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to pop it up into the chat, or you can raise your hand and you will be called on. So our first question came in from Marbell regarding our poll question number 1. And it was, how could this impact if closing date is near fiscal close? And the poll question was, which was for recurring payment purchase orders, how many days does a PO stay open after its scheduled date? So I'm gonna have Snehal please answer that.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. How would this impact if closing date is near fiscal close?
You mean the purchase order staying open or getting closed?
Yes.
Yes. So that is really why we have this extended time before the PO closes. So if it's getting closer to fiscal close, if that's the reason why we are asking if we should increase the number of days that the PO stays open beyond the 45 days. Because we do understand that during fiscal close, you do want to have to make sure that the invoices are received and paid in time. So ideally, you should ask your suppliers to make sure that they're invoicing you in time after, of course, the goods or the services have been performed or received. Obviously, you don't want to pay in advance. So UC as a whole does not like to make advance payments. And so we should try to make sure that we receive the goods or the services before the payments issued. And even during fiscal close, if we increase the number of days that the PO is open for, like the 60 or 90 days, that will help get the invoices in. Of course, the closing dates don't change just because the invoice is still pending. So you need to make sure that the fiscal close deadlines and the dates are being adhered to, and you get your invoices through before the 13th month's over if you really want to have your payments be charged to the prior fiscal year.
Thank you, Snehal. Our next question came in from Yvette. How much does it cost for a vendor to get vetted? And Hung answered that for us in the chat. The license costs a few $100s per year, and the initial application is around $500. And if Hung wants to add any more, please feel free to chime in.
No, essentially, that's the cost of the application, but we don't necessarily approve all licenses because, as I mentioned, the main purpose of the licensing program is to maintain our social responsibility program, and having more licensees make it that much bigger of a task to ensure compliance with our policies.
Thanks, Hung. And we had another question come in regarding trademarks from Suzanne. So the vendor could make some products correctly, but could be denied if using child labor on, say, masks. And Hung answered that we ask the licensee to provide disclosure as to where they manufacture products. We work with Fair Labor Association and Workers' Rights Consortium to periodically audit factories, among other things. And Hung, again, if you want to add anything else.
Yeah, to add to that, I'm part of the monitoring committee for the Fair Labor Association. So we're pretty well in tuned as to the happenings in the industry. It's an industry-wide issue, the weaker situation. So should there be something that comes up, we act quickly on it. So even if you are a licensee and your disclosure was proper, if something pops up, we do take action on it. We don't wait until your license is up.
Thank you, Hung. So our next question is regarding software procurement. Rosalie asked, do we need to go through this process in renewing Dropbox? Patrick, are you on, or Snehal?
Go ahead, Sam. Yeah, so basically, Dropbox, from my understanding, is not an approved software at this time. So I know there are others that have been identified by OIT security as acceptable, being Google Drive, Microsoft Teams, and some others. So those will need to be reviewed on a case-by-case basis.
Yes, a lot of people have Dropbox, but unfortunately, Dropbox does not have the amount of security, data security protocols that actually our OIT requires. And that's one primary reason why Dropbox is not considered to be the preferred way for us to be storing our data. So if you go to the OIT's website, they actually have the list of, as Patrick mentioned, products that are secure and safe for us to use for data storage.
So one thing I also wanted to mention is, if you currently are using Dropbox, our recommendation for people have been, please be prepared to transition onto one of these approved suppliers, before your next renewal.
So if I can just add, so because there are a lot of people who are currently paying with PAL card for Dropbox. So when renewal time comes up, I think it's best for you to give plenty of time to get the review done. But I know that there are cases with collaborations with other campuses, other companies. There are different, collaborative projects that are going on. So in those instances, I know that you can't just say that, oh, we can't use Dropbox anymore. So I know there's going to be exceptions. So just that's something to keep in mind, that you need to provide that information when you need that review again.
Very valid point. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay, so our next question is from Lucia. If any of our backup has an NDA, do we attach that? Patrick,
Yes.
that's also for you, yeah, or Snehal.
Please, yes. Any documentation that you have, please attach. That helps us move things along faster and quicker.
Great. And then, so our next question was from Sarah. Will this process be posted on the website? And will all these processes be posted? Yes. All of our software procurement processes are available on the procurement website. You can access it by toggling over the procurement tab at the top and clicking on the buying goods, then clicking on the software box on the top right. And you can access it directly from procurement.uci.edu/procurement/software.php. And Maggie just posted that in the chat as well. Our next question was from Patricia. Can we extend POs, become RPOs for consultants?
Yeah, so consultants is a very tricky thing. So you have to be very careful in just kind of making RPOs. If you have an agreement that is for a certain period of time, and if you want to extend it, again, remember, we have to be very mindful of the value of the contract and the consultant fees. If it is beyond a certain threshold, we want to be mindful that we are filling out the source selection and price reasonableness form and or doing a competitive bid for areas where we possibly can be doing a competitive bid, which is really what the state really wants us to do, is competitively bid. And only in exceptions where we cannot do a competitive bid for valid reasons are we actually supposed to use the source selection and price reasonableness form. That form actually is an exception form and not the norm. So I want to make sure everybody clearly understands that the first preference is to do competitive bidding, which is what the state requirement is. Only in exceptions where we cannot are we supposed to use the source selection and price reasonableness form. So please be mindful of that.
Thank you, Snail. And for those of you that need to hop off at 11 o'clock, we're going to continue the recording and answer all the questions that came in through the chat, and we will also post it in an FAQ on our website, so no need to worry about not getting your question answered. Our next question was from Sarah. Is there a way to have a system where we are informed if we're missing information on a requisition?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Sarah. And that is something that's we have identified as an area of improvement. And from the contract side, we already have created an intake form that actually identifies all the items that you need to have and made available before you actually submit your request for a contract. We are working on a very similar checklist that Sarosh alluded to in his presentation that we are going to make available to all the folks across the campus for them to actually make sure that they check off all the requirements that they may have when they are submitting the requisition. That we believe is going to be a huge improvement in turnaround time in getting the requisitions approved. And also, as you mentioned, making sure that everybody knows what items they need to provide depending on the purchase that they're making. So that's on its way, and it will be released fairly soon.
Hey, Snehal, and this is Sarah. I asked the question. I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to clarify too. I think the checklist is a fantastic idea, and I'm really excited to have that. But if I accidentally miss something and I submit it, is there going to be some kind of like notification or something that we're missing something? Because, for example, if I have to submit a Form A, I know I have to submit it in every one, but if I forgot to upload it or something, I'm not going to know that unless unless someone tells me, just because I forgot to upload it. But then I won't know until I go back and I email contracts maybe a couple weeks later asking for an update, and they say, oh, you're missing information. And I could have known that the next day.
Yes, that is right now, unfortunately. I mean, believe me, we have been looking at a contracts management module or a system that can help us have these kind of elements available. We just haven't found a system that is cost effective and easy to use. A lot of people have homegrown systems, but we are exploring options on how we can get a system that will allow us to do exactly what you are saying. And UCI Medical Center actually is using something called a legal sifter right now, where everything gets pushed over to them and they do this check. And once they vet it out and it works out for them, we are hopeful that we can also get that at the campus. So we can do something similar to what you were just saying. So All good
Thank
things.
you.
Very good questions, Sarah. Thank you for asking those, and work with us to bring this up so that we can try to find solutions for you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. So the next question was from Robert. What does a punch out mean? And Barbara answered that in the chat. It's the punch out catalog is a way to display pricing. It goes to a website that mimics the supplier's retail site, and it has our negotiated pricing on there as well. It reflects real-time pricing, availability, and hosted catalogs are updated quarterly. Suzanne asked, will water dispensers be removed?
So water dispensers are not going to be removed, but facilities management is working on putting some labels on them, or putting some stickers and tags to say do not use and things like that. Now, if you're talking about the bottled ones, we actually have inquired with Nestle, and they have said that the shelf life is 2 years for those bottles. So even if you have bottles that are sitting around doing nothing right now, they should be okay because they have a 2-year shelf life.
Thanks, Nehal. Lisa asked, can you please let us know how we would go about obtaining a freestanding hand sanitizing stand for our department?
Yeah, so freestanding sanitizer stations are actually ordered for housing because they felt the need that they needed to have those. We do not have those for the departments because we believe that we can have the dispensers being installed on the walls because they are on the indoors and in the inside spaces. So we actually have ordered over 4,000 of those. So facilities management is going around, and as the folks are coming back and getting approvals from the CRIT, they are getting installed at the appropriate location. So if you need a dispenser, please reach out to facilities management on their website and submit a request to the logistical support team email address.
Hi, Snehal. So we have received approval from CRIT to reopen, and because of the way our facilities are run, it would be difficult for us to mount them within certain rooms, and so that's why I was inquiring about the freestanding. Okay. So is it possible for you to give me a contact person in facilities so that we can obtain a freestanding one?
Well, it's not up to the facilities management because we have to get approval from central budget for additional purchase of stands. So
Okay.
just send an email to logistical support team at uci.edu. And we will look at your request because we meet every day to look at requests from the departments and the schools. So,
okay, thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Next question was from Lucia. How do we know what vendors are approved for us to purchase with? If we have purchase requests from our teams and the vendor is not in KFS, we have requested onboarding for them. How do we know whether we are onboarding an approved vendor, and how do we ensure that even Pell card purchases are made through approved vendors?
Okay, thank you for the question, Lucia. There are a couple of things to keep in mind here. An approved vendor is something that you would know if the vendor is approved because you are requesting them to be onboarded. And if you're using a Pell card, you don't need to have the vendor in KFS, right? So if you are trying to use a vendor that is with commodities that are already an approved commodity, you will be able to use your Pell card to make the purchase. But if the commodity that you're trying to purchase is a restricted commodity, you will not be able to use your Pell card to make that purchase. And then if it's necessary and urgent, you'll have to justify that and get the proper approvals to do so. Jennifer, you can add more to it.
Yes, so one of the good, something for all the cardholders to look at is our purchasing methods guide. I know that we train everybody, that's part of the training and everything, but some people I know they use it a lot, some people may not, but that will give you the guidance whether something is allowed to use with the Pell card or it needs to be done on a corporate travel card or a PO, a high value PO. So that's the first one you want to check on our website. And then if there's some exceptional reasons why you might need an exception on the Pell card, then you can always contact pellcard@uci.edu. So there's training, but if you need more information, just not enough information on that on our website, then you can contact us regarding that. So whether you're trying to figure out is there something allowable or not, if it's restricted, then as a cardholder, you're supposed to know the policy that these items are restricted on Pell cards, so you need to go through a high value PO. But I get it, there are exceptional things sometimes, so that's why we're there to answer any of those questions and accommodate anything that we can. So if you allow some kind of exceptions, we've already vetted all of that through their buyers, whatever, if it needs to go to Soros or Snail or the contracts team. But yeah, there is going to be a process where, this is how you're supposed to do contracts. This is how you're supposed to do, right? So payment on the Pell card is never going to be, when it's an exception like that, it's never going to be done without me or Stephanie checking that everything's been already vetted when they're exceptional things. So I hope that answers or helps.
Thank you, Jennifer and Snail. I would like to add one point too for the question, how do we know what vendors are approved for us to purchase? On procurement website, under procurement, I think it's bullet 3, 4, or 5, there is a list for all contracted suppliers. If you click on that, you can also see there's a search feature, which is very good. It also gives you the benefits of using a contracted suppliers in why it is so efficient. And you can also search by commodity. You can just type, I'm looking for IT or furniture, and it will give you the supplier which you can use on the website.
Yeah, good point, Soros. Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, the goal should always be to look at contracted suppliers that we already have contracts with.
Okay, so our next question was from Yvette. The culture we had previously with procurement was supporting small business. There was a ton of work put into that culture. Are we leaving that culture behind and just turning to the big companies that can underbid the smaller companies?
Yvette, thank you for bringing it up. That is actually not the case. We are always trying to promote small businesses. Of course, small businesses don't necessarily always can provide the kind of product that we are looking for that many of these large companies that have more options and more products available. Interesting that you bring this up. Actually, there is an initiative that is being launched right now at UCOP, and there's going to be a policy that's going to be coming out. That is going to be a small business set aside policy, because our goal was to get up to 25% of spend on small businesses, but we are way short of that. We actually are only between 9 and 12% on different campuses. And so we are looking to roll out a policy that's going to be a set aside policy. Of course, for every new RFP that goes out for any new products or contracts, we always encourage small businesses and diversity and sustainable procurement. And small businesses are always encouraged to participate in the RFPs. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that we are not being biased in the way that it hurts the university, because the state ultimately requires us to use the public funds wisely and make sure that we are making the right decisions. So the goal is to try to increase our small business spend. If it's not a contracted supplier that's available for all the non-contracted spend, which we have quite a lot of, probably about 40% of the spend currently is still on non-contracted suppliers. And for that, we are going to now, going forward in this new policy, ask that we look at any available small business first before we go out and buy from a non-small business or diverse supplier. Which policy, I think Shauna can speak to it a little more if she wants, but that's being rolled out actually on 1st of September, taking effect and becoming mandatory on in March of 2021. So small business emphasis has never lost its place, and we are continuing to try to drive that.
And I'd like to add to that sentiment. In fact, during the pandemic right now with all of our COVID-19 purchases, we are trying to actually go to our promotional suppliers and see if they can help us. And a lot of them are small businesses. So the masks that we have on on staff right now, for available for all the staff and faculty and students, they are from small businesses. So we are definitely trying to keep them afloat during the hard time.
Thank you.
So our next question is from Eduardo. Do we need to submit template from the template even after completing the form, or does the form replace the purchasing template? I'm guessing this is, let me reread that. Do we need to submit form templates even after completing the form, or does the form replace the purchasing templates? And Eduardo, I'm sorry, if you're still on the call, if you want to kind of clarify what that question was.
Hi, Doreen. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify. So we're being asked to complete the Google form, and so after completing the form, do we still need to send our agreement templates to contracts?
No, actually, if you fill out the Google form, Eduardo, that actually ends up getting converted into the purchasing agreement template, and it fills in all the necessary fields that are required. And you should actually get a copy of that once it's completed and submitted. So you don't need to, again, then fill out the purchasing template.
Thank you.
Yeah, it actually does replace the purchasing template in that respect.
And then if you can all stay after the Q&A, Helen's gonna go over KFS GEC moving funds from non-federal to federal. So stay tuned. All right, our next question was from Susie. Snehal, when contracts looks at the requisition and sees something missing, can't they just note it before they move on?
They do note it, and they do need to submit, go back to the departments and ask them to fill out the missing information. Because we don't want them to just move on if something is missing.
I think Wendy also asked, so instead of just approving the requisition, they're asking if, it could just be noted in there.
So I guess the way it works, and just so everybody understands, is that once you submit a requisition, the requisition has to be approved by the fiscal officer. Once the fiscal officer approves the requisition, that's when it turns into an unapproved PO, which the central procurement team then is able to see. Until it's actually become an unapproved PO, the central procurement office does not even get to see that requisition. And once we receive it as an unapproved PO is when we can tell if something is missing. And that's when we can reach out to you and ask you to fill out the required forms or documentation that is needed.
This is Susie, and that's not what happens. It sits in procurement and it's unapproved PO, and we never get a response. Not until we contact contracts do we find out why it's been sitting there. There's never any notes or anything in it.
I see what you're saying. So when it comes to contracts, the process is that you have to do two things in parallel. One is submit a requisition, and if you're requiring to have a contract in place for that particular service, then you are supposed to follow the process of either using ideally using the Google form to Google Docs to submit your purchasing agreement and generate the agreement for that purchase. If it's a low risk purchase, it probably was sitting in the contracts list, action list, only because we were short of staff and were really struggling during the last few months. But now with the addition of the additional resources, our goal is to review every unapproved PO that comes into our action list much faster and quicker and have a turnaround time of less than a week. That's our current goal.
But I just have to respond to, I'm sorry, because it's happened to me twice, and it sits there and we don't know until we reach back out to contracts. And this has been recent. So even though I understand what you're saying, but that's not the process that we're getting. And I see a couple other questions that are actually bringing up the same point I'm bringing up.
About the requisition just sitting there in somebody's action list?
Correct.
Okay.
The unapproved PO. Sorry, to clarify terminology. My unapproved POs, because I am the fiscal officer, so I approve the requisitions. So they go to POs almost immediately after I submit them, but they can sit for weeks if there's something missing, and I just don't know when there's something missing.
Yes. So we are trying to rectify that exact situation. So we apologize that it has been sitting for a while. Like I said, we were really, really short-handed, and we had a lot of issues and things happening with COVID that didn't allow us to process them quickly. But we now are working on clearing all that backlog, and you should not experience that going forward. But we'll make a note of that and make sure that we go through all the requisitions as quickly as we can going forward to alleviate that situation.
I hope that answers Yvette's question as well. The next question was from Tony. For Pal Card reconciliations, we have 15 days to process them, but some faculty with their own Pal Cards are often late, and it results in expense defaulting to the wrong account and that a GEC has to be done. Can we have 21 days or more instead?
This is precisely why we are hesitant giving Pal Cards to faculty. For many years, we were not doing that. But then we were said, well, if the faculty is one of those who likes to do things on their own, we were asked to make special exceptions and provide them the Pal Cards. And this is now the result of that. So that's the give and take with giving Pal Cards to faculty who may not be using the correct accounts and the correct codes, and adding more extra burden and work on the administrative staff. Jennifer, you want to add more to that?
You want to talk about
yes, so,
extended policy right now?
No, so we can't extend it any longer than that period because it's too long. If they're not being able to do it within that period, they're not going to be doing it in 3 weeks, in a month, right? So I think the issue here is really within the school and the department, even though yes, our VC, allowed to issue the cards to the PIs if they would really like one, but we do all the training as well, and there's understanding that it's part of their responsibility. It's a privilege to have these cards too, and so they really need to abide by that policy. So I understand that it's really hard, I think, because PIs don't report to you, the reconciler who need all the backup documentation. I know it's hard. So if it's really a big problem, I can intervene, and it's hard for me too, but we can work together, try to resolve some of the issues. So the problem areas, if you can bring that up to me, we'll try to address it the best way possible that we can address these issues with them not complying with our, it's not just a Pal Card policy, it's a UCOP policy for having a card, a P card. So yeah, please go ahead and contact me regarding those issues that you may have.
Thank you both very much.
No problem.
Thank you. So the next question is from Patricia. So no software can be purchased with Pal Card any longer, is that correct?
Not necessarily true. If it does not require any data security reviews, and if it's not going to have access to our systems, or they're not going to have any identifiable information, we could still go ahead and have that procured on a Pal Card. But it's important to have that questionnaire filled out so we have all the necessary facts and data available to make that determination.
Correct. So what Snail said is perfectly correct. And so one thing that YT and we are working on is a list of all the software vendors. So hopefully by the end of this year, we will have that kind of list where it'll say, if these are okay on Pal Card. On some things though, even though it may be okay for one department, it might not be okay for another because of the type of data that you might be, having it hosted in the cloud. So some will need that review still, but in some cases I know it's never an issue. So there's something like EndNotes or something that's always gonna be okay on Pal Card. And then there's some other softwares that on some departments, depending on their application, it will be okay, and it might not be okay. It may need further review. So we'll have that kind of a list, and that list will be always changing. So just look for that list coming up. Thank you.
And we'll send a communication once that list is finalized. That concludes all of the questions that I've received in the chat. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. Wendy just said, what is the recommendation to replace Dropbox? I believe Patrick kind of went over that. So Microsoft Teams or Google Drive would be a really good solution. OneDrive as well. SharePoint, thank you, Maggie. So if we don't have any other questions, the slide deck and the video and all the FAQs will be emailed to you by next week. They'll also be posted on our website. We do have Helen, who is going to go over some general error corrections right now on federal and non-federal funds. So please stick around.
Thank you, Doreen. I want to take this opportunity to remind the audience who are the fiscal officers. So often the department PIs rush, hey, my award most likely going to be approved. I need this today, this equipment today. And so sometimes you forgot about it. So you went ahead and spent the department's money, which is non-federal fund. And then later you try to do the GEC when the award awarded. And most likely we will disapprove it. And County and Grants Accounting will also disapprove it because if you did not follow the federal guidance, especially for the price reasonableness, the SSPR form that we were talking about earlier. And so the best way is please contact Office of Research, sponsored project administration, have them approve it's called RAS, request advanced spending. And then that way, County and Grants Accounting will set up a sort of like a dummy federal award account for you to spend. Then you'll be required to follow all the federal requirements. And then, then you don't even have to hustle with GEC, general error correction from the KFS later. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, that's something that I think we will put on our agenda for the next meeting that we are going to have, where we will go into more details and try to help people understand some of these things that many of them may not be aware of. So we'll try to make sure that we do that and put that on the agenda for the next meeting. I would like to ask at this point, I know many people have dropped off, 50% of them have dropped off, but we are going to be Maggie is going to be sending out a survey for us to get some feedback from every one of you who have attended this meeting, to get some feedback on what could we have done better, what are the various ways we can help you, and to help us help you. So please try to fill out the survey so we can actually get some feedback from you. We are also going to ask you the cadence of these meetings, how often would you like to see this, and a few other questions. So if you don't mind, please be kind enough to send us your feedback and your input so that we can serve you better. I know that Q actually had a question that she had asked about the equipment leaving campus form. And I just want to make a mention that many of these items, yes, it is hard for you to have a property number. So that's optional. You don't have to fill it out. If you have the property information, please fill it out. If you don't have a property tag or a number, please provide as much description on the form as possible so that we get the same chair back. We don't want somebody to take an expensive task chair and bring back a lawn chair when they come back to the office. So please provide some information that you may have. There are labels on the chairs that can actually help you identify what it is. But whatever people take, please try to have as much description on it if you don't have a tag, so that we can get the same equipment back when people return to the campus.
So I would like to add, for the non-property tag items, please fill out, just enter N/A. That will make you move forward to next step. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And that concludes our session for today. Again, we will email everything over to you guys by next week, and everything will be posted on our website, including more detailed information on the new procurement process at WARDA. Don't worry, we will cover that. So if you have any questions, please feel free to stick around or email us at procurement@uci.edu.
Yeah, I want to have let everybody know that has hung around even after the time was over. Just so everybody understands, I know you find us to be ones that kind of push back on a lot of things, but I want you all to be aware that we are here to actually serve mainly two purposes. One is to help you get what you need. That's our primary purpose. And secondly, we are here to protect the university from any risks or being non-compliant. So I could have mentioned that earlier in the beginning, but I want to make sure that you all recognize that whenever we push back on something, it's not because we personally have any personal interest in it. it's strictly to make sure that we are in compliance and we are meeting all the requirements of the state, federal, and UCOP policies. So again, thank you for being patient. Thank you for your partnership. And we would love to collaborate more and help you more than what you have in the past. And thank you again.
Hi, this is Sarah again. I actually just tried to access the form and it says I don't have permission.
What?
The survey.
Have you been kicked out? No, you should be getting allowed the permission. Maggie, make sure.
If you're signed into your UCI Office 365 account, but you yeah. Okay, then I'll set it so
it could be because I am HS. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah,
but
that might be it. I'll correct the settings so make sure that you guys can access it as well.
We'll open it up and we'll email it again.
Yeah, it will be emailed as well.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Really appreciate all your questions. Please keep.
Thank you for putting up with me.
Not at all.
Keep them coming. They're great questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And if anyone wants to contact me with questions, I'm the fiscal officer and the human resources manager. I do all the finances and human resources for the ICTS. So I love trying to be, proactive with everything.
Perfect.
So
we should chat one of these days, Sarah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. No, thank you for everything.
Welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.